before the curtain goes up, and the curtain's going up on a brand new show, and it's such a big show that it takes two theater companies to put it on. Touchstone and the Arts Club Theater are about to do a Father Tartuffe, an Indigenous misadventure, and we're talking to the adapting this classic Molière play. We've got Herbie Barnes here. Herbie, how are you? First off, let's start there.
I am fine. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, and you're out east right now, is that correct?
I am. I'm in Toronto. I'm the artistic director at Young People's Theatre in Toronto, and so I have to be out here to keep my steady job going while they're rehearsing out there in Vancouver.
And it must be always scary because you've written plays before. It's always scary when you suddenly hear actors saying your words and you're like, that's not how I hear it in my head.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I do when I do write plays, because I'm also a director, is that I let somebody else direct it so that there's another voice in the room, and then hopefully the writing makes sense, and I allow that process to happen. Because as a director, I can sit there and go, no, don't say it like that. Say it like this. This is how you're supposed to say it.
Yeah.
I know. I created these characters. So it's nice to have Halimia and Roy directing that and putting their words into it. So it's great.
Nice. Now, Tartuffe is a classic play. I'm a big fan of Molière. I mean, not a super fan, but you've taken a Molière play, one of his popular ones, Tartuffe, and you said, "Hey, I'm going to adapt this." What made you decide to do that? Were you already looking for an Indigenous type adventure or misadventure, as you say, and then you were looking around for a project, or you were reading the project and went, "Hey"?
The truth is, what happened was I saw a production of it here, and I saw a great production of it done here, and I look for where my story lies in it, and what I found in this one was I questioned why this man would allow someone like Tartuffe to invade his house. And I looked for the justification, and it's just sort of there. And then I started translating it into my First Nations thinking. So that's why I took it back to 1967, 7 years after First Nations got the vote in Canada. That's the first time that First Nations were, in 1960, we were taken out of the category of flora and fauna, and we were considered humans after that in 1960. So it becomes an interesting history. And then one of the things that my grandfather said to my mother when she was growing up, as they were growing up, my grandparents spoke the language fluently, but they said to my mother, no, if you're going to survive in the white man's world, you got to speak the white man's language. So my mother never learned the language. And so it was that, and it was all that survival technique for my grandparents, for my mother to be able to survive, was to sort of learn the white man's ways. But that's what I feel like Orin's doing in this story, is that he's trying to make sure that the next generation survives in this white man's world. So he brings home this white priest to educate them in the white man's ways. He goes off and he's working at Expo 67 and this great job, and he's trying to find how he can sort of get his family into the modern world. And it's interesting, as generations sort of came in, the generation below me now have been learning their traditional ways. They've been going back, and we've been supported, right? So it's all of that. My nieces and nephews all speak language better than my mother does, right? So it's that. And they're powwow dancers, and they're doing all of that stuff. They're back to the traditional. They've learned about the medicines and all of that stuff. That was being taken away from my mother.
It's interesting. I was talking to someone recently about traditions and stuff, and talking about high school students and names, and said like from the 50s, 60s up to the 80s, they had anglicized names because parents were naming them with that in mind, and then it starts to shift and they go back to more indigenous names. Is that your experience as well? Because that was the
Absolutely, all of that is coming back, and it's really interesting that that's going on, and that there's a lot of pride, and I think it happened like I trace it back to 1990, which was a huge year. Um, Dances with Wolves was the Academy Award
right. Oh,
nominee.
yes.
Graham Greene was nominated for an Academy Award. Buffy St. Marie, Robbie Robertson were coming back. Elijah Harper held up the feather. The Oka crisis was going on. We were doing Dry Lips Ought to Move to Kapuskasing in the NAC and the Royal Alexandra Theatre. So everything was around this. That was this huge native pride thing. And the pride, the feeling of pride sort of opened up. And that was, then I think people started to do that and the culture started coming back. Yeah, so it was right around that time.
Interesting. So now Tartuffe, like a lot of Moliere's shows, he pokes fun at hypocrisy, and he was able to do that because he had the protection of King Louis XIV, who found him quite bemusing. He always has tropes in his stories: young couple, but the father wants, or except in Learned Ladies when it was the mother, but the father wants her to marry this guy, but she's in love with someone else, and there's saucy servants who tend to know a little bit better. So you've subverted all of these tropes, or not subverted, you've changed all these tropes to make them fit into the indigenous worldview. Was there any that you found challenging where you were like, oh, what would be the justification for this character coming from? Do you know what do you know what I mean?
Yes. So all of that, hang on, I'm plugging in I'm plugging in the computer because I just got a low battery thing. Okay, so that's a great question. All of these tropes, I sort of found the indigenous trope, but the tropes were difficult in only a small way. So yes, fathers and daughters still have that relationship where they can sort of go, make your father proud, do this for your, there is the daddy's girl that goes on, which was easy to play, easy to translate, especially in 1967, which is why I put it back in that time.
Yeah.
The real struggle came with with Orin's mother, the elder, right? What is that role? And because we respect the elders so much in the Tartuffe, in the Molière version, she is just a little soft in the head. She's easily confused. She's one of them. And we don't have that same idea. Our elders are respected. And I went, I have to give this person some respect.
Right.
Yeah. So it plays all the way through. And then there's a twist at the end that you get to see. And I don't want to give that away because I
Don't you
people
dare.
to see it. But so it's just that was the toughest one, is how to play that. I think we did it. Yeah, I think we found an interesting way of doing that. So yeah, I think I find that I love looking for those tropes. When I teach writing, that's part of the thing that I do is to go, here, these are all the people we know, right? The hero has 1,000 faces is all part of that journey, and we all know these people. So why are we fighting it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, now this is when we should point out, because we're delving into the depths of the adaptation, but it is also a comedy. It's a comedy making fun of hypocrisy and people being duped, and they get more and more duped. So we, the audience, are shocked at how far it's going, and we're admiring the people making snappy comebacks. Like, this is the original. I guess Tartuffe, not Tartuffe, Molière invented the wisecracking maid.
Yeah.
That we see in sitcoms.
Yeah.
How about we do this? How about we do this? You now are going to tell this audience, the Vancouver Presents audience, why they should not miss Father Tartuffe, why they should see this show. So I usually do this to my guests. You have to go beyond the press release and tell these Vancouverites the weather's just starting to get nice. So they, Vancouverites, when the sun comes out, it takes a lot to get them into the theater. So you have to get them into the theater why they should not miss this show. You think you can handle this?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'm going to count you in. 3, 2, 1, go.
I think you have to come and see this show because there are historical accuracies in the conversations, the joy and the play that is done within the Native community, which is something that kept us alive. I think our humor is something that kept us, that keep us going. So there's a lot of great humor in there, and the characters are so fun to watch as they create, as they spiral down and get themselves more and more and more into trouble. There you go.
Fantastic. I love it. Harry, thank you so much. Now you're going to come out here for the debut, I assume.
Fingers crossed. It's getting busy out here, so I'm like trying to figure out with everything that I have to do with young people's theater and with a couple of other things. I'm like trying to struggle, but I unfortunately I know I can't do opening night because I'm doing general auditions here at Young People's Theater, getting new young actors into the theater. So that's
nice. Well, hopefully,
yeah.
hopefully find some old actors too, because they
Yeah.
need work too. All right. Well, I know you'll get here to see it at some point, and I assume it's going to be a huge hit and be produced all across Canada next season. So good stuff, Herbie. Thank you so much, and congratulations on a remarkable, remarkable accomplishment.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.